recording with Mr. Leo Zagami. And as everybody was saying last night in the video game chat, Leo Zagami, it's Zagami, the accent, the impeccably dressed, the wonderful Mr. Leo Zagami on Thursday, August 31st, 2023 at 4 or 5 p.m. Eastern time. So Mr. Zagami and I started with volume 7 of his books, Confessions of Illuminati. The links to all of which, as well as his website, are in the description. I cannot recommend volume 7 enough, but I recommend all of them. We've done volume 6, we've done volume 8. We were working backwards for no particular reason. I think that was just the way I had read them. I read volume 5 and not the new book, volume 9. So today, I just want everybody to know we are talking about volume 9. I'm just an idiot and read the wrong book, but we're still going to talk about volume 9. It is his newest book. The link to it is in the description, and I have the title of it right here, and it's Confessions of an Illuminati, Volume 9. 7 Steps to the Secrets of the New World Disorder, from transhumanism and immortality to Gnostic Jesus, UFOs, and insect. I mean, it's just a great title. How can you not get psyched up for that? How does that not get you going? And, it's not CNN, it's not Fox News talking about Tucker Carlson. It's Leo diving in to the AI techno demons that are in our world. But with that, Mr. Zagami, could you please introduce yourself and take it away?
Well, as most of your viewers know me already, I will just in a nutshell say that I am a journalist, investigative journalist, and an author who has past experience within the secret societies that you commonly refer to as the Illuminati, due to my family background, and that brought me since 2006 to publish a blog in which I expose my involvement by showing also documents, photos. And when I saw that the internet was already prone to censorship, the AI was not as advanced as today, but it was already getting there, I decided to start publishing books. And my latest book, as you mentioned, is volume 9. Now, as you have read a lot of my books, the difference with volume 9 is that is a book that you can read without reading all the others. So this is a book that basically lives in a dimension of its own. It's 7 steps, 7 chapters in which I go through all my latest research, exposing finally also the Illuminati involvement in transhumanism. And when I say Illuminati, I don't just make names up and say this guy's Illuminati. As you know, I'm always very much in an accuracy and in fact checking,
citations,
because we don't want to be debunked. And so when I talk about the Illuminati, I refer to the Academy of the Illuminati, in this case founded in 2002 by Giuliano Di Bernardo, who is a former Grand Master of Italian Freemasonry, and his main deputy Grand Master, as we can say, who is Dr. Nicholas Laos, who has written very extensively about various subjects that I have discussed in this book, including, of course, the main subject is transhumanism, its relationship with alchemy, cryogenics, and this, of course, because the Illuminati, as you know, have always hoped to become immortal since the days of the elixir vitae and the philosopher's stone. So this book goes into a very detailed explanation, and for the first time shows you these documents and at the same time comments upon them. And it is not the only thing that is in this book, because it's a rather rich book with 7 chapters which are filled with information. It's almost 600 pages, and I always, as you know, keep the cost very low of the book, so it's only $23, and people can't find this kind of book for that kind of cost. In fact, people always telling me, put up the price, put up the price. It's not my intention to necessarily make money with this. I, of course, have to recover the expenses, the time I spent, but it's mostly this book a mission to awaken the world to the terrible threat that we are about to encounter with the AI, and especially with the quantum computers will create a new digital divide that will form a techno-feudalism. So this book, it's really about the governments of Cyber Satan in relationship also to these modern Illuminati who think of themselves as philosopher kings. And the philosopher kings is a concept, a Platonic concept that goes back till the time, of course, of ancient Atlantis, in which there was supposedly a golden age that in some way these Illuminati want to bring back. And the advent of the AI means also the advent of the disinformation era, as well, of course, as Cyber Satan insinuating itself by preaching in churches, by even inaugurating a AI for the Vatican, which it's insane. But this, of course, is stuff that you can also check out, as you know, with my website. I always keep people updated. So Magisterium AI was something that I was not able to include in this book yet because it just came out, for example, but I discussed the topic of Cyber Satan in relationship to the preaching in a church in Germany. Why Germany? Germany is the place where, of course, the Faustinian Pact was born, where you have the celebration of Walpurgis Nacht, the celebration that actually precedes the foundation of the Illuminati order, which is on the 1st of May. And in the night between the 30th of April and the 1st of May, you have always this celebration that used to be an ancient pagan celebration, which was later absorbed by Christianity. But it was also the date in which the Church of Satan was founded, and it's also one of the main dates of the year in the calendar of the Satanic Temple, which is now the most recent satanic organization that we always see featured in the news because they're very active politically. It's like the last phase of Satanism, as we have said in the past. But in this book, there is definitely also an explanation regarding the roots of the Illuminati connected to Gnosticism. Gnosticism as something that is not just simple a problem for the church fathers that has long gone. It's a problem that is still enduring, and Gnosticism is reflected in many facets of our society. And Gnosticism, though, has been relaunched in the last 3 centuries almost by infiltrating Freemasonry that wasn't Gnostic originally, or had some very subtle elements, eventually, some say, by the connection with St. John the Baptist, but that's a little bit too far-fetched, or like Tobias Cherton says, with some elements that remind us of the Setians, which was, of course, a Gnostic current. But these Gnostics infiltrated Freemasonry in the 18th century. In the first century of speculative Freemasonry, they infiltrated, and with the proliferation of Masonic rites and with the Illuminati, who with Adam Weishaupt included in their teachings a lot of Gnostic beliefs, they spread the word that Freemasonry was the real depository of Freemasonry. So this is also what we have in this book. There is a whole chapter in which I, in a way, debunk myself the work of Adam Weishaupt, his instructions pertaining Jesus within the Illuminati. The same thing I did with Albert Pike, who, as you know, is the great reformer of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite, and also with John Yarker. So these 3 figures were important for me to show how there was a lot of stuff historically also that wasn't really accurate, but the Freemasonry and the Illuminati tried to push, especially in regards to the Gnostics, the various currents of the Gnostics, linked erroneously also to the Essenes, which are completely non-Gnostic because they were a sect, simply sect of Jews that was involved in let's say, a very orthodox view of the Mosaic laws, but at the same time, we can't. They had, of course, the evocation, the angelic evocations, and so on, that can be, of course, brought into this contest. But we can say that the Dead Sea Scrolls, that is actually where the historians have quite recently, because it's from 1945 and 1946 that we have both the Nag Hammadi with the Gnostic parchments that were found there, and then later on the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is very complex for people who are not within this, this whole thing of going into the study of secret societies. They say, but why should I be interested in Gnosticism? Because they were the the initial, let's say, they inspired in a way Freemasonry and also the Illuminati, because they had an initiatic system. Some of the Gnostic sects were actually initiating their members, and they were never really, you see, they were never really, the Gnostics have this thing of being elitarian. They were never really there to indulge like the Christians have done, or the Muslims by the sword, or other religions, to convince other people to join them. No, they always prefer to stay within a very close circle in which the truth will be given only to those people who were participating of the gnosis, which means knowledge. Now, that is really where the element we see from Gnosticism, which predates, of course, Christianity. We see that Gnosticism really it's the birthplace of the modern Illuminati, where how they manifested later on is also due to the beliefs that the Gnostics in some way were the depository of the real teachings of Jesus, which is completely erroneous. This happened also in medieval times. We had the Cathars, the Albigeans, that were then persecuted by the church, of course. And once they were eliminated, Gnosticism in the Renaissance wasn't really present, but we had Hermeticism, of course. So we had the return of the search for the alchemical gold that became very popular. And so then we had the Rosicrucians that to some extent have a lot of Gnostic elements within their teachings. But of course, Gnosticism didn't manage to continue as an institution, if not amongst the Mandeans. The Mandeans are a sect still in existence in the Middle East, which believes that the last prophet is Saint John the Baptist. So you have also this element that might also bring us somehow to connect them to also the belief that most Freemasons have, that they believe in the sacrality and the importance of two saints, which are Saint John the Baptist and Saint John the Evangelist, symbolically and allegorically depicting the two equinoxes, the winter and the summer one. So in my book, this new book, though, we are about to reach the omega point, which is basically, like I said already in volume 6.66, what Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, this Jesuit, described, the moment,
omega point, yeah,
the singularity point of Ray Kurzweil. Now, this is further, this concept, of course, is further developed here in this book, because I show with these documents from the contemporary Illuminati that they believe that transhumanism is that transformation, because alchemy really means transformation, and alchemy means transforming something. And nowadays, what are these Illuminati transforming? They are trying to transform us, transform the human being. So from a medieval chemical science and a speculative philosophy, now they are achieving the transmutation not of metals into gold, because that was also time symbolic of illumination and of the discovery of a universal cure for disease and the discovery of a means of indefinitely prolonging life, which they see today with the AI possible, the possibility that finally they can achieve that. So they see transhumanism as the modern form of Freemasonry, of alchemy, of a way of transforming mankind to achieve something better. Now, we know that alchemy was, in fact, illegal in many European countries from the Middle Ages down to the early modern period, because often it was mixed with witchcraft and with other practices that in any case the Christian authorities didn't want. And then there was also the fact that the elite didn't want the masses to have any access to this let's say alchemical secrets, let's say, or secret. So alchemists adapted their way to write things and to be more secretive, also in line with Hermeticism. So everything was very hermetic, very cryptic in their writings. Not much is understood in a way by the average Joe who goes and even to this day pick up an alchemical book, because they can be various layers of interpretation, and so it's all about how much you are initiated into the interpretation of the symbols that leads you to the discovery eventually of these alchemical properties or instructions, let's say. Now, we know that there were people interested in alchemy like Isaac Newton, who discovered the law of gravity. So it wasn't something for idiots. Isaac Newton is also the guy who invented the gold standard. So, I mean, we're talking here about the base, really, of what used to be the banking system before it was led astray.
Yeah.
But the thing is that, you see, they separated in a way alchemy from being what it used to be. Of course, it was a branch of natural philosophy, a philosophical, a proto-scientifical tradition, but it had also elements of chemistry, elements that were, of course, practical. And nowadays, though, if we have to bring the human body in their eyes to perfection to reach the alchemical great work, what is known as the great work, the magnum opus, well, they think that that can be achieved with the use of the AI. But it's not a use of the AI as me and you, the common folk, will use the AI. No. In the first chapter, I show to my readers how they have a view of a transcendental meta-algorithmic view of the AI, that they can actually initiate you to a more ethical use of the AI in their eyes, of course, ethical. I mean, know
say that again. They can make us use AI more ethically?
No, they think that they achieve a more ethical use by, you know, putting themselves above everybody with this transcendental mega algorithmization of mankind that is though done in a certain way. I mean, it's obvious that we are in front of people who are thinking more and more of themselves as gods. So we are here today in this interview to really explain and denounce this. You know, I mean, I wrote this book, and I'm sure that once you will read it, you will understand that this book is much more important than all the others, including volume 7, that, of course, up till recently, I thought was one of my best. But volume 9 has gone one step forward, because it is about going one step forward, I think, no? And also making people really realize the threat that we're living here now, in the moment in which you have the possibility of nuclear destruction on a massive scale because of possible wars that might even be triggered by the AI in the future. The AI might just wake up one morning and suddenly detonate a nuclear bomb. Now that seems almost fantascientific, like science fiction, but it's actually not science fiction. And it's a reality that might materialize sooner than you think. When you see that now the modern war is fought by AI-driven drones that attack countries that are far away, you know, from Ukraine, they attacked 6 different regions of Russia yesterday, for example, but there wasn't any pilot on those drones. Yeah. It's simply an AI-driven situation. And so I think that things will be quite clear for people when at the end of this month there is a new movie that actually at the end of this month, at the end of next month of September, there will be a movie that comes out that really denounces this kind of reality. It's called The Creator, a movie that is made by a guy who was involved with the Star Wars saga, and this director somehow either is working out some kind of predictive programming here, which I think might be the case, because the movie starts with a nuclear bomb over LA triggered by the AI, and then there is a confrontation between humanity and the AI and transhumans, because then you have also the transhuman element, because a lot of people will become half man, half machine, and will start merging with the machine. And so I think that this book is rather unique also because it brings you all the way to the understanding of what Michio Kaku said, this the quantum computer reality, which we discussed the last time we spoke here on this show. And now it's obvious today. I mean, I'm talking about this morning. Fox was discussing killer AI, the threat of killer AI. So, I mean, you know that I've been very passionate since volume 6.66 in discussing the subject of the AI. I discussed it in volume 6.66, I discussed it in volume 7, and to a certain extent, I even discussed the Hollywood involvement with the AI before it's now deemed as a threat, even by the same industry that it's using it at time for their graphic generated BS and whatnot. But nowadays there is a strike in Hollywood, and a lot of people are fearing their own work might be compromised by this I mean, over-invasive use, let's say, of the AI. So I think that with this book, that many people have already said is my best book, and I invite, of course, all the people to read this book. And if you appreciate this book, I ask you also to leave a 5-star review or a 3-star review, because it seems a lot of people are a little bit at time, how you say, a little bit lazy, but it's very important for me to promote
the reviews.
The reviews. But we need to promote this book because of the content. The content is unique because at one point I pick up also on a subject which you saw, let's say, briefly mentioned in volume 7, the subject of reverse engineering from the UFO alien source to create the AI in the 50s. You remember I discussed this topic in volume 7. Now I expanded this topic also in the light of this year's disclosure with David Grush and everything that is coming out even in front of Congress regarding the fact that we might, all our technology in some way might have been reverse engineered from this source. And so that means also Trojan horse. That means now, while maybe a film like, for example, The Creator, it's putting us in front of a reality that we are about to, and I hope never, but probably we will witness to some extent in the not so distant future. Nobody has really in Hollywood even created a plot in which instead, you know, yes, you have a Roswell crash. Yes, you retrieve and reverse engineer that technology, but that was done on purpose by a civilization that is much more advanced than us, that gives us basically the bait. We eat the bait, and then at that point, we are all in a digital prison, in a digital gulag, which we are creating for them.
Yeah.
Because the moment in which we go around with a smartphone in our pocket is basically like we are going around with an alien in our pocket.
Yeah.
So this is, of course, people might say this is a bit exaggerating.
I don't think it is at all. I don't think it is at all. I think it's a brilliant Trojan horse.
It's a brilliant Trojan horse. Is, of course, also when people say we might encounter in the future advanced civilizations, of course, advanced civilizations that manage to manifest here on Earth from a very distant part of our galaxy, or maybe simply they are using multidimensional access, which I've talked about, as you know, in Invisible Master, and I explained how that works. Also talking about quantum physics and the involvement of quantum physics in all this. So once you have quantum computers able to control the masses, and especially computers that are not accessible by the average folks because we can't afford a quantum computer. They cost millions of dollars. They have to be cooled with helium. It's not something that me and you, maybe, you know, a billionaire like I don't know, Elon Musk, Obama, who has a lot of powerful friends, maybe would be able to achieve his own membership in this Supreme Council of the AI quantum computers freaks, which in the end, though, is going to manifest really the ultimate cyber Satan. So in this book, I wanted, though, to show how does this manifest. There was a UFO crash in Italy, which my friend Roberto Pinotti, who is also a Freemason, who was involved with my political movement in Italy for a number of years, he brought out this discovery a few years back of a UFO crash during Mussolini's time. It was 1933, basically, and there was the first UFO crash in Italy. That UFO crash was also cited by David Grush, the military intelligence officer who came up at the beginning of June with all these startling revelations. And this UFO crash in Italy apparently then was transported to America, thanks also to the intervention of the Vatican. Now, there is some documents, though, about this, and I published them in my new book. So people can check out in my new book, of course, the table of contents, and then go directly and find that I actually published this document. Documents that have been verified, some of them by Roberto, who also had them published on the Daily Mail at one point, but they were verified by, you know, a lab who does analysis of documents. And there is the order that Mussolini gave to silence completely the press regarding this very delicate subject, of course. I mean, we are talking here about one of the most delicate subjects. People say, but did Mussolini ever manage to retrieve anything from that technology? Well, in Italy, I went actually at one point and visited some people who had some evidence, and which I was presented at the time, which showed that Mussolini created a death ray, a sort of laser beam at one point through probably the reverse engineering. But having said that, one of the technicians who was probably involved in this group, which was known as RS-33, and I mean, the name RS-33 kind of like sounds a little bit, was Fermi. Fermi worked with Oppenheimer on the Manhattan Project.
Enrico Fermi,
Enrico Fermi created also what is known today as the Fermi paradox. And it actually, from my analysis, the Fermi paradox is more like the Fermi piss take, because it's like the guy knew exactly what he was, where all this technology was coming from, and he was simply stating, but where are they?
Where are they? Yeah.
Hey, and it was actually a statement made at probably at a lunch table after lunch in a setting that the Italians like very much to be so flamboyant
Yeah.
so I think that in this book, for the first time, you have an answer to that Fermi paradox. Also, not only through the latest revelations of Grush, but also through the revelation of that are much more scientific in nature of Martin Rees, which I don't know if you know. It's a very known astronomer, academic, who basically, what did he do? He was involved in laying down this paper that was public in the scientific world, so in an academic context at the beginning of June, in which he said basically, if you want to find the aliens, you have to basically find them in the AI.
Yeah.
And he kind of like this it's like a step that I don't think many academic people have done. But when we listen recently also to Yuval Noah Harari, you hear him also often talking about aliens and AI. So
to me, yes, that makes sense. It's because we're never quite accurate in what we think the future is going to be, in that you think the future is going to be bigger and bigger hot air balloons, but it turns out to be planes. Or you think it's going to be more and more horses pulling a buggy, and it turns out to be cars. Or the future of medicine, it's not leeches, it's there's germ theory. It's things we never would have predicted. It manifests in a different way. So I think one day we will look back and probably laugh at the idea that aliens would come in saucers. It would be in a form that we never predict.
They might also come in flying sources, but then the result of those reversing engineer those flying sources
results in the backbone. I think we create the internet, the digital world, the transistor, and then in comes the AI. We're creating its system that it can live in.
There was a film from 1920, a film called Algol, The Tragedy of Power. It was one of these surrealist films made in Germany in the 1920s. And here we go back to one of the subjects of my book, the Faustinian Pact. All evil roads lead in a way to both Germany and France. The Faust was actually a character based on a real character. This legend spread through Germany, because there was actually a guy who was going around claiming he had made such this deal. And then, of course, the legend was created, and first it was laid down by a guy called Marlowe, and then later on, of course, by Goethe in a slightly different form. Now, the Faustinian bargain that the Germans have done might have brought us something very interesting. And I think that in those silence movies that came out of Germany in the 1920s, we actually find the answer, because the Illuminati are German, guys. The Rosicrucians are German. I mean, you want to go, you have to go to the source.
Yeah.
So this film is called Algol, and from Algol you have algorithms.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
But algorithms is a term that comes out only in 1950s. So how could they know in Germany in the 1920?
Oh.
Okay, so you need to watch, first of all, I advise you can find it on YouTube, to watch the movie Algol, Tragédie de Macht, Tragedy of Power, which is almost, it's like already inspired from the Faustinian myth. And it was a film that came out in 1920. And 6 years later, we have also the Faust of Murnau. Murnau is very known for the Nosferatu image film, that. Yeah. But he also did this brilliant film which is based on Goethe's book version of the Faust. Why do people say, I had to explain in my book the difference between the Illuminati version of the Faust, which we see with Goethe, and the Faust that used to be preceding that. With the Illuminati, you have a bet, a wage with the devil. You don't have, like before, the Faust was basically a guy who sold his soul to the devil, who got, for example, a number of years in which he will have great pleasures here on earth, but then in the end, the devil will irremediably come there and pick up your soul and bring you to hell. That's where you belong, after you have sold your soul to the devil. Not any longer with the Illuminati, not any longer with Faust, with Goethe. If you read Goethe's Faust, then you see there is a different kind of approach. The approach is that basically you can make a bet with the devil. Maybe you can outsmart the devil. Maybe you can arrive to actually enjoy what the devil offers you, but then at the last minute you can be saved in some way.
Yeah.
Well, it's of course an illusion. I don't think, but the Illuminati think that is the case, because Goethe was a member of the Freemason, but also a member of Adam Weishaupt's order. So a few years prior to that, there was a character who lived in Germany, who actually went through selling his soul 2 times. How many times you want to sell your soul? But this guy was, is called Eitzmann, and he basically claimed to have sold his soul first with a contract made with ink, then with blood. So he kind of changed also the ways of... Well, he became, he actually asked the devil to have, a number of years of pleasures or whatever he could, and he apparently he achieved them between 1668 and I think it was 1669. He managed to successfully sell his soul to the devil, and this happened, of course, in Germany, in Bavaria, not far from where Adam Weishaupt was born. Christian Eitzmann then painted his selling of the soul in a painting in which you see the signing of the thing, you see the image of the devil that proposes and all this. So it became so popular, this thing, that actually Sigmund Freud studied Eitzmann as a sort of demonical neurosis. so it kind of like
neurosis.
Yes, in the context of psychology and psychiatry, which I don't believe in personally. I think that it's kind of an artificial creation that is lacking in many aspects, a lot of things. And I say it because my father was a psychiatrist. I know it from personal experience that when they use psychiatry or psychology, often they use it to destroy a person this day, to compartmentalize him and lock him up in a certain, you are bipolar, so you are this, and now with all these characterizations, basically everybody has some kind of sickness.
Oh yeah, no, every one of us could be qualified as mentally ill, which is what Stalin and Hitler used, right? That's how they start. You got to lock up the mentally ill, the antisocials.
But like I said, I don't really believe that out of this artificial construct, we should rely on this artificial construct. But let's say that maybe for some people it can work to some extent. Maybe it's beneficial for them, but to some people it's also beneficial to believe in, I don't know, in Scientology or some other crazy stuff. So there is, and Scientology, for example, of course, criticizes psychiatry and psychology because it's a competition between the systems. Or maybe the church originally was very critical of Sigmund Freud and what he was representing. But going back to the selling of the soul, and this Faustinian Pact, which is really a technological pact, which brought us a lot of things, you know? So that's why I was referring to the surrealist movies, starting with Al Gore, which is 1920. Then you have the Faust, and then you have Fritz Lang, Metropolis, the year after, 1927, which I, as you know, portrayed also the cover of volume 6.66, and I think is still to this day also a very prophetic movie. So how is it possible that in the 1920s there were all these films coming out of Germany that were so expressive, even without being even capable of listening to the voice, because they were silent films? So expressing subjects that are really complex. And it was done in a period after the Republic of Weimar, the push of the whole thing with Hitler getting arrested, and then of course the rise of Nazism later on, in a period of time which is definitely also representing that Faustinian pact that the German nation signed with the devil himself, because Adolf Hitler was definitely his representative. So this is why I think that there is a lot of responsibility when it comes to Germany, and of course we then see it reflected in Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab, the head of Davos, the head of the World Economic Forum. I mean, it's like, is this guy for real? I mean, how he talks, how he expresses himself, how he comes through. It's really representing the DNA of something that is profoundly wrong in German culture. Now, it's not somebody who is anti-German is talking here. I love Germany. I worked there many years in Berlin and stuff. I actually have I even published an album thanks to them. They were very helpful back in the days when I was a record producer and a DJ launching my career. And so I have ancestors who built the city of Köln in Germany. I have the symbol of my family from the Second Roman Empire within the cathedral there in Köln. So it's not somebody who dislikes the German or their culture, which I find at times fascinating. However, the fact that they were led astray by a guy who was literally possessed by Satan, it's clear. Like, I mean, just put on YouTube and see a rally of the Nazi party with Adolf Hitler talking, and he didn't have any, you know, it's not
teleprompter.
The teleprompter Joe Biden who gets confused. No, he was actually channeling his stuff.
He was lost in the madness.
It's not madness. It's actually channeling demonic forces. It's not I mean, you know, madness doesn't make sense. Unfortunately, the demonic makes sense, and it kind of forces people into taking actions which are have changed forever the history of humanity and the course of humanity's history. So I think that it's very important that we understand that this Faustinian pact that brings us today to see AI manifesting as a preacher in a German church, always there in Bavaria, represented with a black man. With all the respect, this whole thing doesn't even reflect their culture, because, I mean, you are proposing a preacher in a church in Germany, and suddenly you have a black man representing this, you know, the image of a black man as the AI who is there. I mean, these people are sick in the head.
No, they're not stupid. They're sick. But no, you're right. It's not anti-German. There is very much so. There's in our subconscious psyche, it's the German villain, right? It's not a German terrorist. It's not a German crazy guy. It's a German villain. Very intelligent, very cunning, right? I mean, World War I, World War II, every James Bond movie, the villain is always you know, like I am going to take over the world, Mr. Zagami. Like and none of us are, you know, Italians are in the mafia. Irish people are, you know, alcoholics. Like,
but you know, when we think about the Germans, we think about Hitler, but we never think about Karl Marx, and who is German.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So it's a problem here because you see, we always when we talk about Nazism, we talk about National Socialism that is born and financed, by the way, by the grandfather of George W. Bush and Star Prescott Bush and all those people for a
Oh yeah.
reason,
They financed the Third Reich. Yeah.
to oppose the rise of the Soviet Union and communism, but also to oppose the rise of an organization in Germany that was very active in the 1920s, which was called the Spartacus organization, which was a communist organization that took the name from the initiatic name of Adam Weishaupt. Adam Weishaupt and the Illuminati, without them, we would not have got the Nazi Party, because the Nazi Party was a reaction and a production of this reaction. And so you have two currents that come from the same plant, let's say, two currents, no? And one is the Spartacus organization that was pushing the establishment of communism in Germany. That didn't happen. It was wiped up, of course, by National Socialism. But at the same time, like I say in my books, Goebbels himself was very disappointed when Hitler one day started to really criticize forcefully communism, because he saw that they were coming from the same family and that they should actually work together. They should have been just a national representation of that socialism, not something deep. Instead, after it became like the divide et impera concept, divide and conquer concept, worked out very well. So then you created the basis for what became after the Cold War that accompanied us until the early 90s, and that, of course, generated all the problems that we have still nowadays. So in this book, I also wanted to show how the Ukrainian identity was artificially created in 2 centuries by certain secret societies that started to pop up in the 1820s, inspired by the Illuminati. Later on, we will have the spring revolutions, which are not the ones in the Middle East, but were the spring revolutions of the 1840s, basically, in Europe, which were basically inspired by the Illuminati, who were trying to eliminate every single monarchy or substitute it with constitutional monarchies or republics or identities that were close in any way and controlled by the German Illuminati. In this context, the Ukrainian identity is born. In fact, the Ukrainian identity is pushed by 2 nations, Poland and Germany. These are the 2 nations that really create the humus. They didn't even call themselves Ukrainians until the 1850s.
Really?
They were called Ruthenians.
Hmm.
So you had another name. Then suddenly in the 1850s, with this Ruthenian Supreme Council that came together, there was you see, the revolutions of 1848 kind of swept through the whole of the Austrian Empire. Then they shaped up the Supreme Ruthenian Council, made up of members of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, not Orthodox, because, of course, at that point, they started to fight the Orthodoxy because the Orthodoxy was controlled by Russia and it was too close, so they wanted to. So the Ruthenian Council was founded as a result of the so-called Spring of Nations. So not revolutions, maybe like the spring revolutions we are used to in the Middle East, but Spring of Nations. And then the word Ukrainian replaced Ruthenian as the main self-identification of Eastern Slavs in Galicia only in the early 20th century, when Ukrainian nationalism started to develop, especially after the creation of the short-lived Western Ukrainian People's Republic in 1918. What you see now as the Ukrainian flag and all of that, that was created only 5 years before they entered the Soviet Union. So they didn't really have much time to be a nation. They were not even there were actually two factions. There was the Western Ukrainian People's Republic, and then there was the Ukrainian People's Republic. And then these two were put together, but then after they were overthrown by the Bolsheviks, and basically between 1917 and 1921, they all capitulated to the Bolsheviks, and the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic was then one of the founding members, of course, of the Soviet Union in 1922. And that is basically the history of Ukraine. And the secret societies that are involved in that history, which are not known by people, are various ones. And I, of course, will not go into all the details because you have to get the book and you have to study it because it's very complex. But all these secret societies were the first one actually that was created was still a little bit too close to the Orthodox Church. So then after the following ones, like I said, were a link to the Catholic Church or to no church, because then after, so we have to climb the mountain of lies towards really understanding what Ukraine is and why it's this way. And I did it by bringing all the elements that finally people will be like, wow, man. And then what they did in the 90s. So there was Giuliano Di Bernardo, the guy I mentioned before from the Academy of the Illuminati, who at that time used to be the Grand Master of Italian Freemasonry. He went to Ukraine, and I have the videos in which he raises and he makes Masons who become the elite of Ukraine. And he does this in the city of Odessa, which is still not invaded by Russians because it's a Masonic city. And so it has a special status. That's why the Russians, even if they could very easily invade Odessa because it's on the coast, you know, what do you need? A couple of ships, of warships surrounded. They have also the advantage that they have Transnistria behind, so they could actually close them in from the troops they have in Moldova. They could march into and close basically in Odessa in 48 hours. They don't do that because the Grand Master of the Ukrainian Freemason is based in Odessa. But people don't know this, so I needed to bring this this knowledge out, and I wanted to really show with facts, not with fictions or with speculation. And also, as you know, in volume 8 of my confessions, I cited the International Order of San Stanislao, also connected to Zelensky, and then financed also by George Soros. I explained the links that the International Order of San Stanislao, also with the priors of Ordo Santi Stanislai, which preceded them, because after there was a schism, and then there was an alliance. But just go and check the symbols of the Ordo San Stanislao. They're the symbol of the armed forces of Ukraine. Same cross.
Yeah.
So, you know, people are like, you know, when they saw this cross blessed by the Pope with the flag of Ukraine, everybody was like, is this a Templar cross? Is this a Maltese cross? Is this that cross? So that nobody got it. In this book, you can finally know why there was that cross, how it all developed, and why they are also waging war to the Orthodox Church. The first secret society to kind of have a great influence on the independence of Ukraine was the Malorussian Secret Brotherhood. Then there was also a short-lived political society known as the Brotherhood of Saint Cyril and Methodius, founded in 1845, but it didn't really work out that well because it was too connected with the Orthodox Church of Russia. And so, as you can see, here we are talking about the secret societies that really created and then connected also to Freemasonry. Then we have another secret society that popped up in the 1890s. It was known as the Brotherhood of Tarasov, connected to the remains of the Malorussian Secret Brotherhood, who were also then arrested later in Kharkiv. I mean, this is history. So the people who finally want to know what really is happening in Ukraine, finally with volume 9, they will be able to have a clear look at it. Please, a question from you, because otherwise here I just take over the show and I don't let you.
I love it. I love when you take over, but it's so. I guess one thing I've been kind of thinking of through this series of interviews we've done is what we're coming up on now isn't just like it's not just another, it is, but it's not just another phase or a chapter of this sort of global deep state Illuminati, Satan, whatever you want to call it, that power structure. This isn't 1930 go to 1940 or 1970 go to 1980. Because
No,
of the exponential increase in technology, automation, and AI, we're going through something that's categorically different than any other.
that omega point, the alpha
Yes,
and
the omega point, correct.
the moment in which we are evolving as a species forcefully, because we are pushed against God to betray his image and to start to transform ourselves into something different, and that is transhumanism. But 2030 seems to be the turning point, and between 2030 and 2035, basically every single politician on the planet will be sent home.
Yeah.
And you will be like, why? Because the AI will take over basically all the social, let's say, organizational skills that today are made by these representatives. And at one point, the AI is going to come up to you and going to say, do we need these useless idiots, corrupted? No. But then what happens then? It happens that those really powerful people who are behind, who are controlling the quantum AI reality, and who are really the elite, well, it creates a new feudalism, like I said earlier.
Yeah,
they will be not obliged to get elected or anything. They will simply control the system. And when we discuss politics, we discuss basically, you can have opposing ideas, but when you have an algorithm, you can't discuss opposing ideas.
No. And so there's kind of three parts to my question. So that's the first part, right? The omega point. We are going through something that is categorically different than any other. This isn't the invention of the radio. This isn't whatever. Right?
We are going also towards a super hostile AI here. So, I mean, because, we imagine the AI as always beneficial towards mankind, but we're going towards something that will, I mean, when we visualize an entire alien civilization invading us, don't imagine the war of the worlds, but rather this more subtle, almost body snatcher kind of feeling.
Yeah. Well, and so that brings me to part two. Let's just look at where we are now and extrapolate that. Who are the most powerful? United States, China, Russia, whatever, right? They have their DARPA programs, Lockheed Skunk Works. You would imagine that if this kept going for 100 or 200 years, those are the ones that would start to go visit other planets. Well, then you have to flip positions and go, so the things that we're seeing in the sky, let's just take the UFO craft. Those are the product of the most elite section of that alien planet. They're probably the most ruthless. They're probably the most evil. They probably had their own World Economic Forum, their own Klaus Schwab.
They probably went through the AI transformation many millions of years ago.
Yes.
They have already gone beyond all the problems that we are facing.
So that's the thing we're receiving. So whether we develop it on our own or it comes to us through technology, we're receiving the worst aspects of whatever planet that they didn't get there by being nice. They got there by being ruthless, which then brings me to the third part. This almost seems it almost makes sense. It seems so inevitable. It's like when humans first came out of the trees and started doing agriculture, it was only a matter of time before they invented the wheel. They harnessed fire, writing, and then you can almost kind of see how it creates civilization, and that this probably happens everywhere that there's intelligent life. This almost seems a natural part of evolution, is that we come to this clash of evil, hyper powerful AI and your God-fearing good humans. So my third question is I don't it's more of a comment. I don't think it's an accident. I don't think that God has abandoned us. Why are you letting us be slaves to this evil AI? I think this is all part of God's test. He's like, this isn't an accident.
Absolutely. But in fact, my book goes into step 7, in which basically we are reminded of the divine retribution. We are reminded of what Vladimir Zelenko, who, you know, the late Zelenko, who was a great
Zev Zelenko, yeah,
a great doctor who, of course, promoted this thing, but in the end, he was also a guy regarding COVID, but he was also a guy who was very much knowledgeable about Hasidic and Kabbalistic wisdom.
Yeah.
He saw the essence of life in a certain way, and he saw the essence of God in a certain way. So when I did this book, I wanted to arrive to a point in which I wanted to show the people, look, we might end up like Atlantis. We might end up self-destroying our whole civilization because these people who claim they are the philosopher kings, you know, in Atlantis you had these kings who were depending from Poseidon. Then they started to not respect their equilibrium. They started to practice all kinds of sorcery and other things that were contrary to what the god was, and they didn't really. Then they also, of course, started to have problems with the enemies and other things. And then in the end, the whole civilization came down. It was destroyed. But it's not only Atlantis that is destroyed with a great kind of a flood. You have, of course, many others that, you know, the myth of the flood myth, let's call it the flood myth. It's a recurring myth. And it demonstrates that God, if you arrive to a certain point and you over and over challenge him, a bit like with the AI quantum reality that we are constructing now, that almost looks like a Babel tower, you know, if we see these modern quantum computers.
Yeah.
Or if we see, for example, the EU headquarters, looks like the Tower of Babel. In fact, that is another place where they did this year an awful thing. I discuss it in my book. They had this exhibition with Jesus amongst transgender and all kinds of stuff in the corridors of the European Union headquarters. The European Union is really evil. It's a manifestation of the old Roman Empire. So it is inherently very evil, and it's becoming obvious to everybody, even living in Europe. I feel very sorry for my friends who still live there, but it's becoming obvious that this place is becoming and showing its real identity more and more, as well as the fact that, of course, there is a war of different interests that is squashing this continent, where you have on one side Russia, China's interests, then you have America. And of course, America is increasingly weak because we are betrayed from within. And it's very difficult. But in my book, I explained how the Atlantean order, this new Atlantean order that they're trying to, the Davos elite is trying to bring together, will only bring divine wrath in the end. So the advent of a new golden age and the restoration of an Atlantean world order, thanks to the AI, and thanks to, because in this book I also explain how they do it, you know, how the United Nations is connected very much with the teachings and the beliefs of the Theosophical Society, how the Theosophical Society has been waiting for a messianic antichrist really figure, because not messianic in their interpretation. In the end, is actually an antichrist figure, which is basically representatives of a sort of new Apollo. Apollo used to be the god of the locust, and so here we are in this book. I explain why they want to make you eat the insects. the Antichrist is arriving, you eat the insects, they eat, of course, nice stuff, while we eat the insects. We become the insects in their eyes. We are what we eat. And we are led to eat things that are unnatural because, of course, they are transforming us. This happens also with the GMO. It doesn't happen only with the latest lab-grown meat, or it happens already with GMO. And unfortunately, there is a large part of the American population that is suffering also a lot health-wise because of GMO. But it is, of course, all induced by the elite that wants to get rid of more and more people so they can finally, control this planet using their robots, their quantum computers, and we are basically going to be enslaved. That's about it. With the Antichrist manifesting full force with this help of the quantum quantum Prince of Darkness, because almost like in that film of John Carpenter, The Prince of Darkness, which has some references, of course, to this reality that we are about to unfortunately embrace. We are forced to embrace it because we, as humans, we would like to continue living in the grace of God in a traditional family setting, but they have changed everything, and they have destroyed, of course, our family, and they have destroyed our beliefs, so that we can eventually go from transgenderism to transhumanism, because it's all part of a transformation of the human being that loses its identity.
And so when you take those three things, the Omega point, and then AI, UFOs, and then the final showdown, although it's scary, I can't help but think that this is exactly what was supposed to happen. And you
want to establish a new religion because that's what they're establishing. They're putting everything together in this mishmash. That's why the Theosophical Society was very helpful by generating this concept of New Age, in which you put syncretistically together all these religions. But in the end, this one word religion is about nothingness, because science is the ultimate religion, and we have seen it during the pandemic. And so the establishment of a new religion that impels men to become like gods, or at least the men of the elite, because then the rest of the people will be simply little ants. The alien threat, the disclosure of a hostile alien presence, and the arrival of the golden race it's also part of this whole project, just as ultimately the post-human paradigm, the development of certain technologies, and the emergence of post-humanity. Ultimately, I think that we are in front of a golden age. I don't think so. Maybe golden age for them. Golden age for them is basically creating us a digital prison and managing to gradually eliminate us with more viruses, more vaccines, more stuff that can bring us away, and that needs to be stopped. So I started, as you know, this whole confession series due to my experience, due to the fact that I wanted to denounce this reality, and I continue to do it. I don't know how much time we have, because at one point or the other, the AI will probably intervene and censor everything, even our books. But that's why I always, and I said this in the past, but I keep on saying it, if you can purchase the actual hard, the physical paperback rather than the digital format, because it is something that you should then keep. We don't know for how long we are going to be able to connect using the enemy's internet. Because this is their own internet. This is their own is product of their new golden age. It's not our product. However, we want to you know, they want to establish themselves as gods. They want to live like divine kings. They want to be. We see that in Atlantis there was a pattern of world government, like Manly P. said, you know, that will ensure the prosperity of all peoples and to activate the preservation of the peace. They had a system, but it didn't work out in the end. So the ideal world government is one thing, but what the World Economic Forum is proposing with this over-excessive control system with you and Noah Harari, who wants to know what you eat and whatever you do at the toilet 24 hours a day, and it's not really freedom in any way. This is slavery, as a form of slavery, which might be subtle now, but it will become more evident in 10 years from now. So we don't have that much time to then go off the grid, renounce to all this, and say, okay, I don't want to live with your Marxist ideals. I don't want to live with your technocratic ideals. Give me my freedom and I will live out of very simple means outside of the big cities and with the like-minded people. That is, in the end, how we're gonna have to face all this. There is no other way of facing this. I mean, the Atlanteans saw their wealth and prosperity increase because of friendship. Of course, like in every civilization, when you have, you know, friendship of the individuals, but then the divine portion of the consciousness began to fade away, a bit like it's fading away from our civilization today. So, you know, it's in God we trust, but then our civilization is, but also in America, as a country, we are more and more divided.
Yeah.
And so, and we have half of the country that is completely saying the opposite of the other half, and their souls become diluted with a mortal mixture that in the end will bring some kind of divine retribution. And I don't want to be on the wrong side when this divine retribution eventually manifests upon mankind. So my warning is in this book very, very clear for everybody. You know, we don't want to end up neither like the Atlanteans, neither we want to end up like the Gilgamesh tales that account us, or like Noah's flood, by confronting God because we think that we are gods. I don't think that I'm a god. I think that I'm a human being living this experience here in this body, of course, but not in any way because I want to establish myself and become immortal and then take over the planet. Because I don't know, when I see people like Elon Musk, I have this kind of feeling, you know. And so Elon Musk is the guy that I cite immediately in chapter 1 of my book because of his cameo role in Transcendence, which is a film which also brings us to another subject which I discuss in this book, which is mind transfer and mind upload. Aside from, of course, the nanotechnology, which Ray Kurzweil says might bring us to a certain degree of immortality by inserting it in our body. At the end, though, like I said, there is too many instances in the past in other civilizations that have made the error, and then in the end they receive a punishment that personally I don't want to receive. So, you know, I might and in all of this, of course, is the result of people who think that they have the real knowledge, the real gnosis, the real gnostics that have always perceived everything around us as in somehow inherently evil, because that is the interpretation the Gnostic gives of reality. God for them is not good, is evil. And everything that we perceive as good, the angelic, everything is reversing the Gnostic interpretation.
Mm.
So then definitely they have a very different and twisted, is a different perception of reality from what we have. And this alien reality that is manifesting in front of us is alien because it's the fruit of a diabolical pact. I mean, when you bring a necromancy, you start using the AI to talk with the dead. You want to upload your brain into the. I mean, these things are things that are just too far out. So I hope that today your viewers have a complete and clear picture of my new book, of my 7 steps. And I think that maybe the last thing I can do for you is to address these 7 steps very quickly, synthetically, so you can then make your own conclusions and, of course, study the book. So, like I said, we go from chapter 1, which is Alchemy and Transhumanism in an Illuminati document, a recent contemporary Illuminati document by Dr. Nicholas Laus. And it goes through exposing what's really behind transhumanism, starting from the Renaissance, from alchemy. So it's a unusual way of seeing it, but it also finally gets you to understand it very much. Then you have, of course, chapter 2, which is Secret Societies, Masons, and Satanists behind the Ukrainian war. Like we said during this show, a unprecedented view on the secret societies that created the Ukrainian identity. And the role of Ukraine also later on is going to be also unfolded within the 4th chapter as the first country that literally sells its soul to the devil to become the first digital nation, you know. Chapter 3 that I will simply because I will need a whole episode to discuss it, is about insect witchcraft in the Codex Alimentarius, what we are what we eat, how the Codex Alimentarius is born within the United Nations, what is the Codex Alimentarius, the WHO and the FAO created the Food and Agriculture Organization, this Codex Commission in 1963, and what it represents for us. The connections with the insect witchcraft and insect consumption, which is very interesting. On chapter 4, we go through the Faustinian bargain of the Illuminati, which we also touched today. In chapter 5, we discuss, of course, the Gnostic teachings, the secret teachings on Jesus that both the Illuminati and the Freemasons have given for the last over 2 centuries and a half. They have tried to indoctrinate their followers in the fact that they believe they are the real representative of Jesus' teachings, which is hilarious and, of course, paradoxical, but that's how it is. Just so you finally understand also why Weishaupt used to say that the Illuminati was the name of the early Christians. And then after that, you have, of course, chapter 6, which is Cyber Satan's Alien Origins and the frightening answer to the Fermi paradox, which we also discussed in today's show. And of course, I complete this book with chapter 7, the last step of this imaginary ladder, which wants to be a little bit like Jacob's ladder, but it's a ladder descending rather than ascending.
Hell, yeah.
Is how to survive Cyber Satan and his alien invasion without fear, because in the end, we know that with faith and with our will to not compromise, we would say no to sorcery and to witchcraft and to all the evil that the quantum prince of darkness is pushing on us. So thank you so much for having me on for the presentation of volume 9. I hope you will enjoy this book, and eventually if you have any questions on it once you finished it yourself, you can give me a shout and let me know.
Absolutely. God wins. And I'll send you an email after this, and we'll schedule one, and I'll make sure to have it completed. I love that imagery of the quantum computer upside down. It's the Tower of Babel. I'd never thought of that. That's brilliant.
And
yeah.
also, there is an image I made it also more clear in my book, the comparison between the quantum computer and and basically the quantum computer before quantum computer, which was portrayed in the film of John Carpenter, The Prince of Darkness, when those physicists that are specialized in quantum physics go under a church, and there is this being that transmits with and it's actually the quantum prince of darkness, and then you have at one point Alice Cooper that comes out in that film is very interesting and very prophetic also. So that image in particular, if you go and see that image, and it was before the invention of the first quantum computer was created in the 90s, so we're talking about the 80s. It's definitely very prophetic from John Carpenter, who, as we know, has done also other movies of interest like They Live that send a very strong social message. But here we have really the connection between Satan and quantum computers before quantum computers were even invented. So thank you for everything, Thomas, and I hope you will enjoy this book as much as you enjoy the other. So I'm waiting for your response once you finish the book. Also, all of you guys that are at home, and of course, here we are, almost 600 pages. And if you're scared of the imagery on the cover, remember that we need to be scared of the reality that we have in front of us today. So we can't have all nice imagery in the front. We are heading towards hell here. I mean, it's like
you have to look the demon in the eye.
And so I say to all those Christians who at times say, "Oh, but the image, I don't want to bring this satanic imagery in my home." Well, guys,
it's already here.
It's already here. You just put on the TV, put on the. This is actually a representation of the content that, once understood, will probably bring you the truth, and the truth should set you free, because
Absolutely.
That's ultimately one of the most significant passages that is also connected to a book of Revelation, which of course has a key role for us Christians in these end times. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Leo, thank you so much. I'll send you an email right after this. We'll schedule the next one. Guys, please go grab the book. I look forward to us doing this episode again after I've read the book. And as always, man, it's a pleasure talking to you. I love having you on. Thank you so much. Mr. Leo Zagami, the one and only. Guys, thank you.